Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Event Marketing Tips and Tricks on Extending Your Martech Stack to the Event Show Floor. I'm Sal Asoro, publisher of the Managing Report, and I'll be your moderator for the presentation today. For those of you who may be new to the Managing Report, we are an online media company publishing daily news, a weekly email newsletter, special reports, original research, and a rich menu of additional resources. If you haven't done so already, please join more than 60,000 of your peers and join our weekly newsletter by subscribing to the Managing Report today. In addition to publishing the Managing Report, we also produce the premier event in B2B marketing technology each February in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, the B2B Marketing Exchange. This is a 3-day event. It's actually February 24th through the 26th, and it focuses on helping professionals improve the B2B marketing and sales strategies and results. Consistently, I should say, rated a top B2B marketing conference by Forbes each year. The B2BMX brings over 1,000 marketers together for 3 days of educational and networking events that include more than 100 sessions throughout 6 topical tracks, which include channel marketing and demand gen. You can learn more about this unique event and register to attend at b2bmarketing.exchange. Throughout this event, we're hosting a special sweepstakes where attendees have a chance to win some awesome prizes from our SPS 19 prize pack. Registrants will automatically be entered for chances to win for every session they attend. And we do have some great prizes this year, including a Withings Move Hybrid Sport smartwatch. I'm not even sure what that is, but it sounds pretty cool. Apple AirPods, which I have purchased quite a few for my boys who lose them. And Microsoft Xbox One S, and 5 free passes to the B2B Marketing Exchange. So be sure to attend all 16 of the SPS 19 sessions for your best chance to win. For today's presentation, we are using the On24 platform, and during the presentation, you can access all the information you need from the platform toolbar. During and after today's presentations, please follow along and share your thoughts and feedback on Twitter and LinkedIn using the hashtag SPS19. For your convenience, you can tweet directly from the On24 platform using the Twitter widget on the left-hand side of your screen. And let's try to make this as interactive as possible, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them at any time. You can use the Q&A widget at the top right corner of your screen. Today's presentation is slated to run about 25 to 30 minutes with about 10 minutes for Q&A following the session. And for those who are dying to know, I'm happy to report that today's session is being recorded, and all attendees will receive an archive link so you can go back and review or share with your colleagues. In addition to joining the conversation online and submitting your questions, we also welcome you to let us know how we're doing. In an effort to constantly improve the level of value we provide to you, we've put together a brief survey that will automatically launch once this webinar session ends. But if you're like me, you just can't wait till the end, good news. You can access the survey at any time during the webcast by clicking on the survey icon circled here on the bottom of your screen. As always, we do appreciate your feedback. Now I'm pleased to introduce our featured speaker, Victor Kippis. Victor is the CEO of Validar Incorporated. It's a B2B lead management company that specializes in events. Much of Validar's value proposition is based upon Victor's experience as a receiver of leads. He has been in the sales role for over 20 years, both as a direct contributor and as the leader of a large enterprise sales team. He understands very well the challenges marketing and sales leaders face specific to event-based demand generation and lead management. So if you're in marketing and interested in understanding and articulating your true value, or sales and interested in improved conversions and pipeline growth, Validar and Victor are here for you. You can follow Victor on Twitter at vkippes, K-I-P-P-E-S. And so I guess with that, Victor, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Sal, very much for that. I'm really excited to be here today, and thank you to ManGen for allowing me to speak. As you had mentioned, my name is Victor. I'm the CEO of a company in Seattle called Validar. We are a lead management company that specializes in events, and to us it doesn't matter what kind of event. It could be a trade show, proprietary event, large users conference, or a seminar series. We help measure your performance through deployment of technology. I'm not here, though, to talk about Validar and our technology. Rather, I'm here to talk about the challenge events pose to event marketers. So if you in the audience, by the way, thank you very much for joining me today as well. I know it takes a lot for an event marketer to take time out of their day, so for you to spend it with myself and Demand Gen Report, that means a lot to me. So I promise I'm going to leave you with some value here, knock on wood. And if you're in the audience and if you don't believe you're getting full credit for all your marketing efforts, or if you think your company doesn't recognize how valuable you are, then there's going to be some tips and tricks that I'll share with you in here. In particular, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can adjust the way you prepare your marketing stack, automation, and CRM systems to consume event data. I'll give you some tips on how to do that, and also talk about the power of what we call the opt-in and the opt-out, specific to how you capture data at both trade shows and proprietary events. If by chance we have some folks here in the audience, that are on the sales side of your organization, and if you prefer working digital versus event leads, or perhaps you're working around your marketing automation system and pocketing leads from trade shows, then there'll be some tips in here as well intended for you that'll help you hopefully better understand how to leverage event content by working with your event marketing team. And if it's done right and done well, it can truly accelerate the buying cycle and help you get these deals closed quicker. Now, before we jump into these tips and tricks, I'm going to spend a few minutes here to kind of define the challenge, and this is primarily from a salesperson's perspective. And what you're seeing here is a question that was asked by the CEIR Group. It's a Center for Exhibition Industry Research. It's a large survey they did with Fortune 1000 exhibiting sponsors at the top 100 trade shows in the country. And one of the questions in the survey was this: do you have a formal lead ranking process? And you'll notice a large section of that, 66%, the answer to that question was no. Essentially what that means is this: if you go to a trade show floor and if your badge is scanned in exchange for a brochure or a squishy ball or for a chance to win a prize, and if there's no other information gathered outside of that scan, then you fall into that blue slice of the pie. And that's still the fact and the case today. Most trade shows you go to, that's how the transaction will take place. There are some companies that are ranking or categorizing their leads, but in most cases this is done on a manual basis post-event. Now keep this slide in mind as I go through this defining of the challenge. There's another question on the same survey that the CEIR Group asked. How many touches does a non-responsive lead receive before it's discarded? At our company, we always push for 4 to 6 touches per inbound lead. And as you'll notice, the majority of the responses fall within that realm, 4 to 5. You'll see 2 to 3 is actually the largest. I'm a firm believer that number is high, just out of sheer frustration from event leads. And you'll also see that ongoing section on the bottom is getting bigger. Those are companies that are investing in technology to actually automate this process, right? So keep this slide in mind as well as I go through defining the challenge. Sacrificial scan. Who in the audience knows what a sacrificial scan is? A sacrificial scan is this. What you're seeing right here is a Dreamforce Ultimate Guide to Swag. When you go on the show floor at an event like Dreamforce, or any large trade show for that matter, sponsors and exhibitors are giving away incentive for you to come by their booth. And it could be anything. It could be prizes, it could be drawings, it could be giveaways. So a sacrificial scan is this, and I do it all the time. I'll grab a bag from a sponsor, I'll walk the show floor, and I'll grab as many cool things as I possibly can, bring them home to my kids and my friends. And I know I'm sacrificing my name and giving my name to that individual exhibitor, and I will be marketed to by that exhibitor and sponsor at least 4 to 5 times, and that's my sacrifice. But you know what? In exchange for that, I have a chance to win an Amazon Echo Dot. So keep this in mind again as we go through these slides. A sacrificial scan is when you sacrifice your name in exchange for something that they're giving away. Now, many companies exhibit at sponsors with different strategies, right? Some go with what I call a fishing pole analogy. Others use what I call a fishing net analogy. The fishing net analogy is one in which they're giving away, in large degree, incentive for folks to come by the booth. And our company has worked with all of them. And I'm going to give you an example of using these strategies at a trade show and how it can work well for you or versus could be a challenge for you, because either strategy can be a sound strategy. One can be a very dangerous one for you if you're deploying it in this fashion. So let's look at it from these two perspectives. The first one is from a cost per lead perspective. These are true numbers from customers that we actually worked with, and in this particular case, these were similar sized companies but different strategies at the same trade show. So Exhibitor 1, the fishing pole strategy, the total cost for that exhibit with 2 people was $12,250. And at that event, they captured 148 leads. They went small. Their goal was to capture as many good leads as they can, but they weren't really sure in the investment, and they wanted to actually test the waters. Exhibitor 2 had an entirely different experience the previous year. They thought the event was amazing, so they went big. A much larger booth, more attendees and more employees at the event, and you'll notice their lead count was much higher. They had a theater. They were giving away a prize every day. They had a dinner party that evening, and they invited people to come to that. So they captured 2,831 leads. Just through the simple math, the cost per lead looks very, very great from an Exhibitor 2 perspective and the fishing net perspective. In a previous life, my company would follow that strategy. They would go big, and they would actually bring a lot of leads back from trade shows. Now, in our case, we scored these leads, and that simply means this. We separated folks that came by the booth that had a genuine interest from those that were there because they were either wanting to putt or they wanted a free prize. And we call these qualified leads. Same numbers, but look at the difference here. Exhibitor 1 had 31 total qualified leads versus 77 for Exhibitor 2. And if you do the math from a cost per qualified lead perspective, the metrics look dramatically different. In a previous life, my company would follow the fishing net strategy and go big. And I know these numbers are accurate because I was being asked to call every single one of those leads at least 5 times. My sales team was. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the fishing net strategy is a poor strategy. Companies do this very, very well. That picture you see there in the bottom left-hand corner, that's a client of ours, Fujitsu. And I believe that's at Oracle World. And they went big, and the traffic they drove was absolutely amazing. And this is a picture of that traffic. I think in this particular case, it was on the second day. They were giving away a free cap. Every single one of those folks that are wearing that cap, they have their name, and they're going to be marketing to them. But they were doing this in a unique fashion that was building their database, right? Same thing in that upper right-hand corner. That gentleman was painting that picture every 30 minutes. A crowd would gather, then it would disperse. And when they would gather, everybody would be scanned. I'd have a bunch of names, and someone from that crowd would walk away with that painting. They captured a ton of leads, but they had a great plan in place post-event on how to manage that. So when is it a good idea to use a fishing pole versus a fishing net? A fishing net is the right strategy to follow if you have a foundation in place. And what I mean by that is this. You should have marketing automation and CRM for automated follow-up. You should be categorizing your leads, meaning when you're capturing these leads, you should separate those that are genuinely interested from those that are not, and you should have content and a strategy in place to treat each of those categories. If you do not have this in place, then I highly recommend you do not go to strategy, follow a fishing net strategy. You follow a fishing pole strategy. What my company did to me and my team is they went big and they gave me those leads. And if you apply that to the previous slides I showed you, all it did is it raised my level of frustration. Okay? This is a study that Salesforce did of hundreds of B2B companies, and it was around conversion rates. What channels are producing the greatest lead conversion rates? And you'll notice in this study, referrals, website, and social media are the highest conversion rates. The lowest are email campaigns, trade shows, and events. And if you speak to B2B marketers, especially on the sales side, you'll find their response with regards to lead conversions to fall in a similar realm, right? Lead conversions are always higher, and sales people tend to want leads from social media, website before they do from trade shows. it's weird, and I don't understand why that is. It's almost as if it's a love-hate relationship with events, because if in the survey, event spending was up. This was in the study that Salesforce did, meaning companies are still spending money on events, and that spend is going up. It's almost like they have a love-hate relationship with events. And the question I have to you is this: why the hate? Where else? And why the conversion rates? Why are the conversion rates low? Where else can you have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and drinks? Personal product demonstrations, face-to-face contact with a salesperson or maybe a subject matter expert, and network with like buyers. To me, it's the best mechanism and means for you to educate and accelerate buying is a face-to-face event. Why are conversion rates so low? The reason is because of this. Event data is very, very hard to make actionable, and we're going to talk about this in our tips and tricks. And what I mean by that is this: if you produce your own proprietary event, you have siloed data. You have your registration data. You have your session attendance data. You have your evaluations from the event. And typically these data sets are siloed and used by the event team only. If I'm going to a trade show and capturing leads, I'm usually just capturing names and giving those names either to a sales team or to a marketing automation system to treat. Event data is hard to make actionable, and this is something that I'll be sharing with you on ways to fix that. Digital marketing, by the way, is something that is much more dialed in and easier to manage and measure. And most companies today that are large and sophisticated are doing that through these marketing automation platforms. They're doing that by tracking implicitly activity on a website. So if you go to a website and download a white paper or watch a video, they know that, they're tracking that, and they're measuring that. Your content is better at an event, but it's not being tracked and managed as well as it is on your website. When I meet with marketers, I always ask them, tell me about your event or tell me about the trade show you're going to, and in 99.9% of the time, the marketing effort associated with that spend is amazing. I am totally, completely a fan of and amazed with event marketers, right? But then I follow up with this question: how do you know if it's going to be a good event or a bad event? And the response I typically get is what I call a nebulous one. Well, if my attendance counts are up, then they are better than last year, that's a good sign. If my meeting's on budget and if my attendance counts are up, that's even better. If my session evaluations meet or exceed expectations, or my lead volume's up and a sales team is saying this was awesome, that's all good. And in my opinion, you're leaving value on the table when you get a response like this. And your value as an event marketer is much greater and needs to be understood in a better fashion, because I truly believe you're driving more value to that organization than you are getting from your digital marketers, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a paradigm shift and talk about tips and tricks that you can implement to better understand how effective your event marketing efforts are. So let's talk a little bit about some of these tips and tricks and some of the solutions. First and foremost, in order for you to measure your performance, and when I say measure your performance, I'm really referring to what I call pipeline impact, meaning if I'm going to spend $1 million to produce an event, or if I'm going to spend $50,000 to go to a trade show, and if I generate interest with my content, what is the value of that interest from a pipeline perspective? In order for you, as a marketer, to answer that question, you need to have 3 entities within your organization on board and marching in lockstep with you. And it's very hard to get sales, marketing, and marketing operations to work together without executive sponsorship. I'm a firm believer that you should have an escalation point should one of these factions stray. And I've often seen marketing drive amazing activity in preparing, but all of a sudden, marketing ops doesn't have the time to get the CRM system prepared to consume this data, and it doesn't work, right? So always have an escalation point in place before you start going through the tips and tricks that I'm about to take you through. And if you are that executive, that actually makes it much easier for you. So let's jump into the tips and tricks. And I'm going to start here talking about preparing pre-event for both trade shows and proprietary events. Let's talk about pre-event preparation for trade show leads. And it's a very simple tip, and that's this. When you set up a repository within your marketing stack, let's assume it's a campaign within Salesforce, I always recommend that within that campaign, you create member status values that align with where a lead falls within the buying cycle. Hot, warm, and cold is an analogy most companies understand. Many companies we talk to have very sophisticated lead scoring categories. If that is in fact true, then make sure when you set up your repository or your campaign, these member status values are set up as well. When you pull up your data within that campaign during the event, you should be able to recognize which leads are hot versus which are cold and which are warm. I'll share with you some tips on how to make sure when you populate this campaign, the data is genuine. You're producing your own proprietary event. The heart and soul of that event revolves around the agenda and the content, right? And if the intent behind the event is to generate demand, all you want to do is to blow them away with amazing content so it drives renewed interest. Your agenda should inspire, excite, and solve challenges. What's the best mechanism to do that? Is it a product demo on the my booth on the show floor? Is it a breakout session? Is it a one-on-one meeting with a subject matter expert? All the companies we talk to, when they put together their agenda, I'm continually and always absolutely amazed at how amazing that content is, because you as a marketer know the best means to deliver the content and the excellent delivery mechanisms to follow, and hopefully you're working with your sales team on ways to do that. But the agenda and the content should align with the event intent, and it's intended to drive renewed interest. So once your agenda is in place, we always recommend you follow this next step. And that is, prepare your marketing stack to consume this data. What you see here is an agenda for one of my favorite clients. This is Splunk. This is a one-day event, and you'll notice they have 4 tracks of activity at three time frames during the day, right? Each of these tracks of activity has a very unique intent and purpose. It could be to train existing customers. It could be to get existing customers excited about a new release or a new product that's coming out. If you have an event and an agenda like this, whether it's a one-day or multi-day event, we recommend that within your marketing stack, you set up a unique repository for each of these breakout sessions. And within that repository, or that campaign, you have 2 member status values to designate. Because if it is my event, and if I'm the presenter for getting started with Splunk Enterprise hands-on, there's 2 things I want to know when I log into my marketing stack. First is I want to know who was in the room. Second, I want to know of those that were in the room, who raised their hand and said, this is super cool, I want to learn more. So when you set up these repositories, set them up in a manner such that you can separate those 2 categories, where you're segmenting your audience based upon how the content resonated with them. I'll share with you some tips and tricks on how to populate that here in a second. Okay, so you've got executive sponsorship, your systems are ready to consume this data, and they're blank, the campaigns are empty right now. Now the event is taking place and we need to execute. Let's start talking about that agenda, that one-day agenda with the, 20 different breakout sessions there. The first thing, obviously, that you need to do is you need to track what we call content consumption. If you have breakout sessions like this, it's always a good idea to invest in scanning or some means of tracking what sessions your attendees are going, right? We believe you need to know of those that have registered, who showed up at the event, what sessions they went to, and more importantly, what they thought of those sessions. So you can track session attendance a number of ways. You can do it passively, or you can do it actively by simply scanning a badge. If you haven't scanned in the past, we always recommend that you invest in that so you can track where your attendees are going, right? Now, when these sessions break out, a lot of companies will use their exhibit to educate and accelerate buying. Meaning, at the new security session, if someone is interested in a demonstration on new technology, What I see companies doing is leverage their exhibit on the show floor and drive folks from sessions to the show floor to go through a more personal conversation around that content. And the other thing that we're seeing often during the event is companies using experiential games to encourage participation. For example, we have clients that will give attendees points by going to a session or by filling out an evaluation or by visiting a sponsor. And those points can be redeemed for prizes at a gift redemption center, or maybe it's a simple vending machine where I scan my badge and I can pull a prize out from a vending machine. If you use games in this fashion to encourage participation, I guarantee you're going to see an increase in your attendee participation rates, and you're also going to see a huge increase in what we call your evaluation response rates, right? We've seen instances where attendees went from less than 5% evaluation response rates to in excess of 35%, meaning attendees that attended breakout sessions filling out evaluations because of these incentives. So these are things that I suggest that you do during the event for proprietary events to make sure you are encouraging attendees to participate and you know which content they're consuming. Now, first and foremost, if you want to know who's in a breakout room, you have to scan so you can track who's in a breakout room listening to a session. If you are marketing your event well, your speakers need to get involved. Meaning, if you deploy technology in an effective fashion, and if your speakers know this technology is deployed well, what they should be doing is they should be communicating to your audience before that presentation even takes place and saying things like this. Hey, listen, I'm about to drop some serious knowledge on you, and the whole intent here is to get you excited about or educate you on a new product we're releasing. If you want to speak to me or a subject matter expert at all, when this session is over, go to the mobile app and there's an evaluation there behind the survey button. Tell me and schedule a meeting there. So capture renewed interest is done through feedback. And make that feedback available live when you're in dialogue, and encourage your speakers to get the audience involved. And also include incentive for that feedback. And one thing that's really, really important is this: creating an opt-in. How many times have you been at a breakout session, you loved the presentation, and you knew at the end of that you had 3 or 4 questions that you wanted to ask that speaker? So as soon as they wrap up, you run up to speak to them real quick, and now you're in a line of 10 people, right? That's a frustrating thing to go through, especially if that room needs to be cleared and another speaker's coming in 30 minutes. So what we recommend you do is you create an opt-in within your evaluation. And it's a very simple thing. Within your evaluation, encourage a speaker to encourage the audience to go to the eval and ask a question like this: would you like to demo or discuss the content of this session further with a salesperson? Always create an opt-in in your evaluations, if appropriate, for the event content, and make sure when that event is over that your campaign and your marketing stack knows those yeses, or those, we call them hand raisers. So when I pull up a campaign within my marketing stack, I know there were 110 people in the room, and of those 110, 46 said, whoa, this was super cool, please call me, I want to learn more, right? There's a lot of ways that you can create an opt-in. We do it all the time. If you simply text the word Validar to 878787, you can see an example of how we deploy this. You can simply do that, and if you have questions regarding this, go ahead and do so, and that'll come to me, and we can have a conversation, at a later date to discuss how this can be working with your program. So the opt-in is very, very important, in my opinion, for proprietary events. For shows, we always recommend that you create an opt-out, and this is an example of an opt-out. I'm going to scan you, and I'm going to give you a squishy ball. But before I give you that squishy ball, I'm going to ask you a question. Hey, listen, thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate you coming by. Here's your squishy ball. By the way, I want to follow up with you. If you're here just because of the squishy ball, that's cool. Just let me know. In other words, if you're driving traffic to your booth, and if traffic is coming in because of a raffle or a prize, and encourage them to tell you they're there for the prize. Trust me, it's going to make your sales team very, very happy, and you can actually change the way you treat that category within your marketing stack if you designate that category appropriately. So if they say, yes, thank you, I'm just here for the squishy ball, designate them as such and treat them appropriately. I'll explain to you what I mean by that here a little bit later in the presentation. If they say sales rep call, I really have a need, I'm interested, you can customize lead retrieval to then branch out to what we call your band questions. Someone that is interested and has designated as having a need, we always recommend you find out more information regarding his or her need through these band questions. So if they say sales rep call, customize your lead retrieval session or device and application to branch out and ask questions that are more relevant so you can identify what their needs are. And remember, your campaign should be set up to accept different lead categories. Those that are raffle only are cold leads. Those that designate mailing list or send literature, I would characterize as warm leads. Those that said call me, I would put them in the hot lead category. Another idea or suggestions for trade shows is this. What you see there on the left is a picture of RSNA. It's one of the largest trade shows in the country. It's an amazing event, and it has crazy amounts of traffic, and companies invest millions of dollars exhibiting there, and they keep coming back because the content and the attendees, it's just a great event. But imagine having traffic like that and trying to scan and score leads in an environment like that. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. And traditional lead retrieval isn't really conducive to something like this. So what companies will do is they will create what we call an opt-in. If I'm giving away a prize, or if I'm giving away literature, or if I'm doing a presentation on the third day, put up a big sign in your booth that says, text Phillips to this number to learn more, or to enter in to win a prize. And if you do that and market it well, you can actually capture leads at a trade show from an opt-in perspective. And in my opinion, these leads are more genuine because you can still survey, but they're filling it out on their behalf versus you trusting a salesperson or a marketing person to fill it out on behalf of an attendee. So an opt-in at trade shows, especially if it's high traffic, is something we always recommend. At a trade show, you're categorizing your leads appropriately. Your leads should look like this, right? Of my 61 leads, 23 said, call me, I have a need. 17 said, hey, this is pretty cool, I'm not a decision maker, send me some literature, I'll forward it on. And 21 said, I'm here because you're giving away a squishy ball. Thank you for allowing me to tell you not to call me, because don't call me, I'll never buy from you, right? It's the derivative of that one simple question I showed you earlier, right? I'm going to explain to you what to do with these categories here in a little bit. Okay. Post-event execution. Let's talk a little bit about now. You've set up your campaigns, right? You've populated your campaigns with data that you captured from your proprietary event or your trade show. Let's talk a little bit about what you do with that data. And we're going to go back to trade show first. These are the lead distribution from my event. Of my 61 leads, 23 are hot. What should happen to these leads? It's a very simple proposition, which many of you may be doing already today. But these leads right here, those are the leads that your sales team wants, right? Those are the leads that you should be calling 4 to 5 times with an individual that is on a salary and you're paying. So those are the leads that should be skimmed off the top, not be given to marketing automation, should be given straight to your sales team, right? Don't send them to Eloqua, don't send them to Marketo, don't send them Pardot and incubate them. They're the ones that need to be called, and they need to have the red carpet treatment. These leads should be treated by marketing automation. Salespeople don't like to follow up with people that just want literature in many cases, unless the lead volume is bad. Maybe you want to give them to sales. But what I would do is I would put these into an incubation stream with marketing automation, but I would make sure that incubation stream has content that aligns with the category, meaning they should be getting an email that says, hey, thanks for stopping by. Here's the literature you requested. Please forward this on. We'll follow up in another week or two to see if you have any questions. And these leads as well should be treated by marketing automation, but less intrusively. Hey, thanks for stopping by. I know you didn't want me to follow up with you. I'm doing so anyway to let you know you didn't win the prize. If you are driving data into your marketing stack in this fashion, your marketing automation system is going to be way, way more effective. For your proprietary events, if you're scanning people into rooms and if you're capturing evaluations, this is something we always recommend you do with your evaluation data and your session data. We call it a summary analysis. I call it a content measurement report, right? And this is an example of one. What you see here on the left, these are breakout sessions. Here's the number of attendees at each breakout session. Here's a number of evaluations that were filled out by the attendees. And across the top are the questions that were asked in the evaluation. And those that are yellow, these are speakers that scored above a certain threshold. Those that are in red are speakers that scored below a certain threshold. Companies today are using their session and their evaluation data to measure how effective their content is. So post-event, I recommend that you take your data and put it into a view like this so you can adjust your content going forward to make sure it's more effective. Now this column here on the right, these are these are individuals that filled out the evaluation and said, yes, call me, I want to learn more. Incredibly valuable data for you, especially if your marketing stack knows that. If done right and done well, when you pull up a record from a proprietary event, you want your record to look like this. This is Andy Catterall. I know that Andy went to my event, but not only that, I know Andy went to these 3 breakout sessions. I know Andy saw a product demo on the show floor, and I know out of all of these experiences at my event, in 3 of them they said, hey, this is really cool. Can someone call me? I'm interested in follow-up here. If you're driving data into your marketing stack and your CRM system in this fashion, your leads are going to be way, way more valuable from events than they are from digital marketing, and you're going to start understanding and measuring your economic value from an event marketing perspective. I am a huge fan of events and event marketers, and as I said earlier, where else can you see a hands-on demo, meet employees, customers, promote your brand, have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and beer, and have all of that done all in one fell swoop? And I can tell you, if you're an event marketer on this call, your value is most likely not understood, and hopefully this session and this webinar will help you with some tips and tricks. Sal, thank you very much for this. Any questions?
Well, Victor, thank you very much. Great presentation. I like the sacrificial scanner. I've been that a few times myself. I know my sons enjoy when I come home with the squishy balls and the little tchotchkes that we pick up. So, but it was great, and again, I really appreciate as well as the real world insights you're able to incorporate into the presentation. Again, a lot of the things that you're mentioning are pretty simple tips and tricks to ensure successful events. So I do appreciate it. Yeah. We got a lot of great questions, so before we get to those, I just want to again have a quick reminder about that survey. Please don't forget, folks, to share your thoughts and feedback before you log off today. Our team really values your thoughts and comments. And with that, let's get off to some of these questions. So I was going through them as they were coming in. The first one I had gotten was from Marcy. She had actually asked, how can I improve marketing automation conversion performance when incubating event data?
That's a great question, and I can tell you most companies that I talk to, 90% plus, are using marketing automation to treat names, meaning if I produce my own proprietary event, I will take the attendance from that event, put it into Marketo or Pardot or Eloqua, and I'll say, Eloqua, incubate these attendees and tell me who's interested and who's not. So you're treating names. If you can deploy the tips that I described and say, Eloqua, I have these 20 breakout sessions at my event, and of these 20 breakout sessions, these 400 people want to learn more. Can you put them into this incubation stream? Those that don't, put them into this incubation stream. I guarantee you the conversions you'll get from marketing automation are going to more than double. But it's really important that you let your systems know what your attendees told you at the event, whether it's through a lead retrieval device or through an evaluation.
Right. Taking the information that they're providing you to make sure they're getting the right type of follow-up.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Great. All right, the next one we have was from Nancy. She asked, what's your #1 tip for trade show marketers to increase pipeline and revenue from trade shows?
So the one thing, we manage leads and we help companies manage leads. We don't help companies create content. And candidly, I don't think I could, because most of the marketers we work with are brilliant at doing just that. But the one thing I would recommend you do is you make sure that when you're capturing data, you're enabling the attendee that you're communicating with to tell you where they are in the buying cycle. Right? Everybody you meet is going to be in a different stage in the buying cycle. If you're capturing that and letting your marketing and automation system know, it's going to improve tremendously. So it really is just deploying technology to capture how effective your content was in generating renewed interest and making sure your systems knows what happened. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So you're feeding the data that you received on site into the system, and again, letting the system do what it's supposed to do.
Right.
Okay, great. All right, I think we have time for one more. And again, folks, if we don't get to your questions today, we'll make sure that Victor follows up. I know he had included the information to text, but we'll also have to follow up after this. So we do appreciate it, because we did get quite a few of them. So this last one is from Ken, and he asked, why do you feel that events are the best marketing investment for lead conversions and product demand?
Well, what I can tell you, Ken, is that events are the best means to actually educate a buyer. And when you do this in a face-to-face fashion, you have access to so much subject matter expert. You have like clients that are dealing with similar challenges. You have subject matter experts that are there to help you with problems. You have live demonstrations that you can go through, and you have subject matter experts speaking on topics in a face-to-face fashion that are relevant to you. You can't get that on your website. You can't get that anywhere else than at a face-to-face event. So the trick, obviously, is to capture the impact your content had on that individual buyer. That's the hard part that most companies are struggling with. But I can tell you, if you have it in place right now to capture the impact your content had on an individual attendee, and if you put that into your marketing stack, I can assure you you're going to find events are producing more conversions than anything else you're seeing today.
Right. Done correctly, they definitely are. Like, obviously, we talked about in the beginning about our event, and again, that face-to-face interaction, it does. I agree, it's second to none. So, but all right. Well, I really appreciate it, Victor. Thank you so much for those. And again, folks, if we didn't get to them, we will follow up with pass along those questions to Victor to follow up.
All right, thank you,
Sal.
Sal.
For such a great session. I want to thank all of our attendees for taking the time out to join us today. Please be sure to join us for our next session, which is Working Smarter, Not Harder in 2020, How to Integrate ABM and Demand Generation to Turbocharge Your Pipeline, which takes place later today, I believe, at 2 o'clock Eastern. So again, appreciate everyone's time, and have a great day.